Bugatti built an engine so complex, engineers needed years just to make it reliable enough for the road. 16 cylinders, 4 turbochargers, and a flaw that nearly stopped this car from ever reaching customers. If you've ever looked at the Chiron spec sheet, you've seen the numbers 16 cylinders, 4 turbochargers, somewhere around 1,500 horsepower. What most people don't realize is how close those numbers came to never happening. This wasn't an engine Bugatti simply scaled up from something else. It's an engine that almost didn't survive its own development. And once you understand what nearly broke it, the rest of the Chiron story, the speed records, the price tag, even the way it ended, actually starts to make sense. Start with the basic math. 16 cylinders sounds like a lot until you realize Bugatti didn't stack them in a straight line or a simple V. They folded 2 narrow-angle V8s together into a W shape just to fit the thing into a mid-engine chassis built for a 2-seat hypercar. On paper, that's clever packaging. In practice, it meant over 3,700 individual parts had to come together by hand, with 2 technicians spending 6 full days assembling a single engine. There was no shortcut, no robotic line that could do this work faster or more precisely than 2 trained pairs of hands. That's the detail most reviews skip past as a fun fact. But it's actually the first sign of how thin the margin for error really was. Build something this dense and this powerful, and the difficulty doesn't end once it's assembled. It's just getting started, because putting it together was only half the problem. Keeping it alive was the part that nearly stopped the Chiron in its tracks. Bugatti's engineers needed turbochargers roughly 64% larger than what the older Veyron used, just to push output up toward 1,500 horsepower. Bigger turbos crammed into that same tight mid-engine bay meant one thing above everything else: heat. Most people assume the danger in an engine this powerful is mechanical, a bearing, a seal, something snapping under load. That's not what nearly killed this project. It was thermal. An engine generating this much heat in this little space can warp components and cook electronics long before anything physically breaks. Solving that took years. Bugatti ran the W16 for more than 16,000 hours on dynamometers and pushed test cars past 300,000 miles on real roads before a single customer ever sat behind the wheel. That's not standard testing. That's the kind of obsessive validation you run when you genuinely aren't sure an engine will survive contact with reality. And once Bugatti was confident it would survive, they didn't just want to prove it worked. They wanted to prove it was the fastest production car ever built. In August 2019, a modified Chiron Supersport went to Volkswagen's private test track in Erlesien, Germany, with Le Mans winner Andy Wallace behind the wheel. The goal was simple: break 300 miles per hour in a production car. Nobody had ever done it. Everyone assumed the engine would be what stopped them. It wasn't. At those speeds, the real limiting factor was tires. Even Michelin's best rubber isn't built to survive that kind of heat and centrifugal force without special reinforcement most road tires never get. Once that problem was solved, the engine that almost couldn't be tamed in development did exactly what it was built to do. Wallace hit 304.7 miles per hour, the first production car in history to break 300. The same engine that needed years of testing just to be trusted on a public road had just outdriven physics on a closed one. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. That record didn't save the engine. It might have been the beginning of the end. Despite the record, despite 8 years of refinement, Bugatti never built more than 500 Chirons. That number wasn't a decision made halfway through. It was the production cap announced back in 2016, on day one. You'd expect a car this celebrated to keep evolving, the way most flagship models do. Instead, in May 2024, the 500th and final Chiron Supersport called Lull Time rolled out of the Molsheim factory, and the line shut down for good. Tightening emissions rules made a pure 16-cylinder engine with no hybrid assistance almost impossible to justify going forward. The same complexity that nearly stopped this engine from reaching customers in the first place is exactly why nobody will build another one like it. Bugatti's next hypercar, the Tourbillon, swapped the W16 for a hybrid V16, bigger numbers on paper, but a completely different philosophy. The Chiron wasn't just a hypercar. It turned out to be the final, most extreme version of an idea Bugatti will never attempt the same way again. So next time someone quotes you that horsepower number, remember what's actually behind it: an engine almost too complex to build, too hot to trust, tested obsessively just to survive the road, then pushed past 300 miles per hour to prove it could survive anything. 500 units, hand-built, never to be repeated. That's not just a spec sheet, that's an engineering team betting everything on an idea most people thought was impossible, and winning. What replaced it is even stranger than people realize: a hybrid 16-cylinder nobody saw coming, built on completely different rules. That's a story that deserves its own video.